Alright, I always get asked, or I hear this question often, what is actually different in Strata Hammer? So I thought I'd just give a little overview of what is actually different. I won't go into detail into everything, just a big overview, right? If you got any questions, just leave a comment or ask me on Discord or wherever. So yeah, of course, there's just a bunch of like crash fixes and stuff like that, right? The thing is, you'll never notice them because it will just not crash as much. Maybe you do notice it if you're used to the program crashing every 2 seconds. Shouldn't crash all the time anymore. There's still crashes, of course, but there's a bunch that I've been able to fix myself. There's been a bunch that were fixed by other source members. I, for example, fixed a crash where when you have a model and you reload the model on the fly, then Hammer would often crash. That has been fixed, for example, so that works really well. Another thing you'll see right now, I have Revolution Hammer open right now, is I'm on a 4K screen, and Hammer now tries to scale a little bit towards 4K or other resolutions actually. Now I have to be honest, this is kind of a hack job. I kind of added this after getting a 4K screen like 6 months before Revolution's release, so I just had to kind of hack in some 4K screening support because the Windows 4K scaling sort of, forcing the application to scale doesn't really work, because then the viewports would always like, these lines would become thicker and thinner. It was just horrible, so I just tried to do my best to get 4K to scale. It works fine in most cases, like all of these buttons are the right size, right? They look nice and crisp. There's also benefit over forcing Windows to scale this. Yeah, so the UI is definitely a stage where it's usable. There's a problem though that these buttons here are like half size, because that is just how MFC works. I've not been able to find a fix for that to actually get them to stretch. They just want to be 1-to-1, so they are just smaller. I honestly don't care. I didn't care, because I still know what they are. I don't click the icons most of the time anyway. Now I will get into the visual things in a bit, but some of the like behind the scenes things also, we just have better compilers, right? If we were to compile this, we've got VBSP, VVS, VRAD, and all of these are just improved mainly in VRAD and BSP. So these are the CSGO compilers, right? So for one, the lighting has nice ambient occlusion. There's a nice feature that was added by a Strata source member that if you have a transparent texture, the lighting that goes through it will actually also be transparent, so you can actually make a grate and have the light shine and project a great shadow on there, which is really, really cool. That wasn't possible before. You'd have to make models for that. Another feature is also the VBSP compiler. For example, supports all of the static prop combine things. And I also added some fixes for instance IO. There was an issue where if you have like multiple inputs and in the instance IO entity would sometimes not call the correct ones. I fixed some of those bugs. But those are mainly like, in the engine background. Most people won't even notice them. But those are all improvements that add over, that accumulate. Another fix is also that these compilers now properly multi-thread. There was an issue where if you go above like 8 threads or something, these compilers will actually become slower. That has been fixed, so I can compile on 31 threads, and all is good, which is really cool. As you've probably seen, we also come with Hammer add-ons. TeamSpan's Hammer add-ons are just pre-installed here. So you've got the post compiler. So all of those features are here. It's a bit of an older version in Revolution. P2C probably has a newer version, but yeah, we've got the like FGD from Hammer add-ons. There's some things that I changed, of course, like for example these also have like our custom versions here, which were made by a community member. These are also here. But yeah, all of the Hammer add-ons things which we also use, like for example the attachment names and the like using it for the panels. When you have a button, you can just point to an indicator name. Didn't use it here because this is a special case map. Alright, let's get into some of the menu items, right? So first of all, this button here hides or shows all of the sprites in the map. So if I try to find, some sprites here, First of all, you'll notice that they don't render through the world anymore, so I can actually see things, right? In Portal 2, this would render through all walls, and then you couldn't see anything because everything was just white. But to go even further, I added this button here that just turns off sprite rendering. And now you can actually select entity, because that was also difficult, right? It was hard to just actually select entity or see what's going on behind there, even when you're not rendering through walls. Some people would set up like auto viz groups that they could then use to hide sprites, but these don't work in instances, so this button is just amazing. I have it off most of the time because I don't want to see these glows. Another thing is also the 3D portable view. It's over here. There's 3D portable, and you'll see that this now, every brush is now gray or white, and this represents whether or not this brush is portable. This turned out to be less useful than I thought. I added this, I think it was really cool, but there's also just a bunch of like special textures, like this is probably a clip. Yeah, there's a glass clip in here, which this doesn't have no portal flag on it, so it is technically portable, but you know, it's a special case. I could have gone ahead and done off the special cases, but it is really mostly just meant to, as like a quick way to open your map. You enable only world geometry, and then you just fly around and you can tell, oh, okay, there's like a surface that shouldn't be portable, right? It's useful some of the time, but very niche, I would say, yeah. Another thing is the Keybinds tab over here. Now, one thing I'll say, the 4K scaling doesn't really apply to these VGUI windows, so everything that looks like dark and orange like this. And also the model browser doesn't get scaled properly. I tried to scale this, it actually worked kind of fine on my end, but it caused issues on people with like weird resolutions that aren't a multiple of 1080p. So people on like 2K screens or 16,000 by 900 or whatever monitors had weird scaling, so I just had to revert this real quick. Yeah, and I haven't really, had the time or the need to fix this yet. But yeah, the Keybinds screen is great. It's a bit, it's not really clunky. It's just technical, right? You have to. There are no really names. These are just like the IDs, internal IDs. But you can change binds. For example, I have the object properties menu on Alt-1, so I can just open this really quickly because my fingers are like this, and I can just press Alt-1 on my left side of the keyboard. I also have toggle texture lock from up here. I have it on Alt-2. Alt-3 is selecting apply overlays. I just had a bunch of custom keybinds just for me because I don't want to take my hands off my keyboard. So these were really cool that you can just change the keybinds. That's one of the best features, honestly, because I've just gotten so used to these hotkeys. Just indicator, selected, Alt-3, place, rotate. Come on. Rotate, Alt-3, place. It's just so quick. Better than like Shift-O where you have to have two hands. On this, I don't know how you're supposed to hit that. But yeah, that's the keybinds. Under keybinds, we also have the options menu. This is completely reworked. It's much, prettier and whatever, but there's also just some new options in here. One of them that you should probably disable if you work on a mod is the Discord rich presence. So with this, if you have Discord, you can then show everyone, oh, I'm working on this map. So you can say line 1 is file name. Then everyone can see map in boss sequence in my mod or whatever, right? So if be aware of this, make sure that you're not leaking anything. It's a problem for modders where this just leaks file names. Might not be a problem. I've learned to just have the file names be so generic that they don't leak anything, like end in this case, right? And not the journey towards the spire or whatever. But yeah, if you want that, you can enable rich presence here, which is nice. There's also a button to toggle whether or not the skybox should be drawn. So up here, draw skybox preview. It's probably enabled by default anyway, but this is pretty cool. You can see the skybox being rendered in the world, which for one just you can make sure that it is actually correct if you misspell the skybox. Sky sunset, if I misspell this and say sky sunsets. Oh, Hammer actually crashed. Look at that. Another new feature. If Hammer crashes and you say beans, I will see beans on my end. Although I check it very rarely, I must admit. What the hell is my hair doing? I don't know, whatever. So yeah, that's the setting menu pretty much. It's just been moved and changed around, and there's some more settings that you could, explore. Let's keep going though. So the settings here, the object properties, have also been a bit reworked. For one, you can see the color that you're picking in here. Normally this is just white, but now you can actually see the color, which is nice to just, click on the light and you see what it is. Or if you have like a prop that you want to change the color of. I want this to be a bit blue. Now it's blue. You can see the color here, which is really cool. Another thing, I just clicked it instinctively, is the reset button. I added this. It just resets it to the default. Sometimes the default is not what you would expect, so you can just change it yourself anyway. Okay, now we're actually getting to the cool stuff. So one of the things that's really annoying when you have a brush, let's make a brush. So with this disabled, yeah, so it's this setting here, use no draw for clipped faces. If I have this disabled by default, and what happened in Portal 2 was, if I clip this, it will put a texture here on the face that is generated. And this texture will be like face 0, face 1, right? The first face on the brush, which on most brushes is the top face. So if I have this set to be this one, and if I now cut the face, it will now put the top face on the side. And often when you're cutting things, you don't want anything in between, right? So you just want no draw there. So use no draw for clipped faces. And when I now clip this, it's no draw. And this is just so cool, right? Because if you want the top face to be there, you can't just go ahead and put it there. You want to UV this anyway, probably, right? You're never gonna just have the default clipped face. So this is really cool. Of course, you can just disable it if you don't like it, but it saved me so much time. Alright, for the next thing, I need to find a catapult, one here. There we go. Catapults now show their trajectories. Amazing. This is definitely one of the best features. So if I go to object and I select this is a trigger catapult right there, and it has a target down here, and you can see the trajectory. This is actually the same trajectory that gets shown in game, so it isn't perfectly round, right? I just copied the code from in game. If you say that this should be a, what was it, use exact velocity or something, then the trajectory is like for some reason curved, and here it's not. I didn't change any of the logic. I wanted this to be exactly the same as in game, where this is the apex where it hits. And yeah, this just makes it so much easier to line up trajectories, right? Because these can often be very unintuitive, I would say, to set up, because to make the arch higher, you have to lower the speed, right? If I set this to 600, then the arch is now higher. So yeah, that's a really, really cool feature. Now, if you for some reason don't see this, make sure that the FGD for Trigger Catapult has the Catapult helper on it. I'll put something on the screen probably, because I merged this into P2C like years ago, and I kept getting messages from people like, hey, when are you going to merge this? And I'm like, I already merged it, I don't know what you mean. But I think it might have not been added to everyone's FGDs, which is why it doesn't show up. So just make sure it's there. If it's not there, if you can see this, that might be why. Another thing that's really subtle, but this, once I got this request and implemented it, it made everything so much easier, is the filter syntax. So these filters down here, right, they're now consistent across the whole application. So this filter in the texture panel, in this panel, and in sound and anywhere is all using the same like algorithm, where if I now put a space in here and I search for something else, it will now sort of be a union. So it will now search for everything that has the word dev and everything that has the word measure in it. So it's inclusive, right? And this way I can narrow my search down. I can go white. And now I see all of my white. But now I can also go like floor. And now I see all of my textures that have white and floor in it. And I don't need to know the exact name. So this just makes it so nice to just search for white floor. And yeah, this works everywhere. So in the model browser, I often just go like cable, hanging, and then I get all of the hanging cables. And I don't have to search for it, I can just go in here. It's so nice and useful. Another tab you've probably seen here, I will have to zoom into this because you can't see anything, is the bones and attachment tabs. Yes, finally. So if I search for something like arm 64, haha, amazing feature. I can select the rusty one, whatever. and I can see all of its bones and attachments here, and I can see, oh, it's panel underscore attach. Okay. You know, sometimes you remember these, but for other things like personality spheres or whatever, you don't know all of the attachments. But here they are. Look at them. You can just see them. You don't have to open up model viewer. You can just see them, which is really cool. You can also see attachments by going over here and pressing attachments, and you can actually see them in here. Another cool thing, this is probably the best thing, honestly. So simple, but you can filter stuff in the sequences, right? If I search for arm 64, and I select the arm, I can now actually search. I can now actually go cornerback. I can see all of the animations here. And now if I want to take this animation, I can press copy, and now it's in my clipboard. Let's make this one a arm. There we go. Pull it up a bit. And now let's set an animation on this. I can just go to sequences, search for cornerback. I see my cornerback animation. Let's use this one. I can either press copy, or I can just press set as default animation, or double click it. And now it will set this animation as the default animation down here. The amount of times before this that I had to manually go in here, scroll all the way through here, find the animation, make a screenshot, write down the name, go in here, put the name there, is just ridiculous. So this is just such a time saver when you're working on things that use a lot of animations. But one of the things that's been changed is the vis groups. I don't actually have vis groups in here, but yeah, previously if you have empty vis groups, so if I make a new vis group, if there's no entities inside this, it will get automatically removed after you open up Hammer again. I disabled this by default. I think it's disabled by default. There's definitely an option for this. If you want to have it back, over here there's automatically delete empty vis groups. This was also requested by somebody, so you can just re-enable it here. But otherwise, if you want to delete all of the empty ones yourself, there's just a button, purge empty vis groups, and they're all gone. Yeah, that has been simplified a bit, because the it just disappears when you reopen the map is a bit strange, and you know, can lead to data loss, I guess. So the reason why I have this map open is because I thought I fixed it, but I really just kind of changed it. The face normal axis here, which now actually points towards where it's supposed to be. Previously this often wouldn't point to where you would imagine it would, but now this actually points towards where the face is pointing. So this just makes editing this stuff a bit easier. Just remember, during editing, another thing I also fixed here is the subdiv normal axis. So this one, when you have, let me just create this new, when you have a displacement and you subdivide, it will be bendy like this, and this can often be awkward to push in, if you want the slope to be a bit steeper or whatever. So with subdiv normal, this arrow will actually follow that subdivision. So now this makes displacement editing like this just really, really nice. Yeah. I think that is the one that I thought of during the video, but I haven't used Hammer in so long that I just forgot about this. But the subdiv normal is, yeah, the real game changer here. This already existed, but I think you had to press shift or something to change the axis. I don't know. I just made it change the axis every time you move, so you can see here the arrow just points where you want it to. So those have really been the main changes in Stratosaurus Hammer. There's also just been a bunch of other small things and a lot of FGD changes and things along that line. Hammer isn't all that Saurus has to offer, right? There's also a bunch of stuff around it. It's just an editor, one of the editors that you use. So yeah, I hope that helps. Bye.